Time flies, and life wears people down over time. My story began when I was very young. I am now 70 years old. At 70, I carry the heavy burden of life on my shoulders. Before listening to my story, would you please subscribe to the channel and like the video? Let's learn about the first steps I took in life. I had this delusion that everything in my life was in its right place. My days were planned down to the minute. I would wake up at 7:30 in the morning, drink my blacks, coffee, and write in my journal. Before going to the gym, I would have a quick video call with Damon, and we would talk about how perfect the rest of the day would be. He was a lawyer, and I was a strategy consultant on my way to becoming a marketing director. Plus, we lived together. Our modern 2-story house was within walking distance of the city center. We had decorated it together. Damon preferred simpler tones, while I favored vibrant colors. Even the yellow cushions I placed on the gray sofa in the living room were a small compromise in the life we had built together. That summer, I didn't know it would be the last. I believed we'd build deeper connections, maybe even exchange rings. Throughout our years-long relationship with Damon, we'd overcome various challenges, but always managed to stay us. Until one morning, while making coffee in the kitchen, he said to me with a straight face, "We need to take a break." At first, I thought he was joking. As he grew more serious, I kept joking. "Take a break? Are you going on vacation or writing a new book, Damon?" I asked. His response held no sarcasm or enthusiasm. "No, I just need some time. I need to clear my head." "Time?" It was such an abstract answer. How much time? A week? A month? What would he do during that time? What would I do? The next day, he left the house. He packed his bag quietly. He walked out the door with only a sports bag in his hand. He left no note, no message, no "I love you." Nothing. Can a person leave someone they've shared their life with so quietly? Damon did. And with a planned, calculated silence. When my friends called me in the following days, I pretended to be busy. I told my mother during our weekly routine conversation that everything was fine. I couldn't show my weakness. My vulnerabilities had no place in such a planned life. Since Damon left, I couldn't sleep at night. Mornings were hard, but evenings were even harder. Sadness lingered in the corners of the room like the shadow of another life you never lived. A month passed. There was no news from Damon. One night, I saw him in a social media post by a mutual friend. He was sitting in a cafe. Across from him was a familiar face, Vanessa, Damon's ex-girlfriend from college. He had asked for time for a so-called closure. It turned out that it wasn't about closure, but about reopening. Something broke inside me at that moment. The man I had thought was living an exemplary relationship for years had left me without a word and returned to his old love. Even now, as I write this, my stomach is in knots. But that night, I realized that Damon hadn't disappointed me for the first time. For years, I had settled for what he gave me, tried to fit into his plans, and accepted that what I thought was us was actually him. And maybe for the first time, I made a decision just for myself. That night, I opened my computer. In my inbox, an offer I had previously starred with a "maybe later" caught my eye. A senior position at an international strategy firm in Paris. The salary, conditions, and location were perfect. At that moment, something stirred in my heart. I didn't want to run away, no. I wanted to run away and start over. And the next morning, I accepted the offer. Looking back now, I realized that decision was the quietest yet greatest rebellion of my life. But that was just the beginning. I don't remember exactly how time passed, which day turned into which week. After Jason said, "I need some time to think," The hours slowed down, but the pain inside me never stopped. That silence. It was deafeningly quiet. It was something that made you go deaf. And the worst part was that he left without any explanation, without any real closure. I first saw him on the university campus, sitting on the library stairs. He had 1 year left to graduate with a degree in computer engineering, and I was preparing a presentation on cultural policies. He looked at me curiously, then sat down beside me and simply said, "You're like a star lost among the books." That's how it all began. Now, the same man had left me with nothing but an empty space. No message, no confrontation, just, "I need some time." That word, time. At first it was a few days, then a few weeks, and then a few months. Our living room was still filled with his belongings. His coffee cup was still there. The books on the shelf were still in order. The drawers. His shirt still smelled like him. But my phone was silent. Jason was gone. At night, I lay on the couch and told the walls everything. I whispered the sentences I couldn't say to him into the ceiling. "Why?" I asked over and over, but no answer came. Then I realized that this silence was the last thing he would give me. Not even a separation, but a kind of transformation into a ghost. Some mornings I woke up, went to work, and smiled. I talked about my vision in meetings, about the impact of cultural changes on societies around the world. But inside there was a completely different battle. During the day I taught myself to say, "You look good." But every night I buried myself under the blanket and cried silently. At this point I even distanced myself from my family. My mother kept calling, asking, "Are you okay, my daughter?" I would smile and say, "Everything is great." Telling the truth meant accepting this collapse, but I couldn't accept that I had lost yet. And then one day, an email arrived on my phone, an offer from the UNESCO Culture and Diplomacy Commission in Paris. That prestigious position I'd applied for years without hearing back. Now it was right in front of me. Something happened in that moment. A spark ignited inside me. I looked around. Everything reminded me of him. The couch, our wall clock, the table lamp we'd chosen together. I looked at all of them and said to myself, either this city will swallow me whole, or I will build a new life. I wouldn't be lying if I said I wasn't afraid while packing my bags. I didn't know what I was doing. The only thing I knew was that if I stayed here, I would wither away. My move to Paris wasn't an escape. It was a resistance. I didn't want to erase him. I wanted to rewrite myself. When I got off the plane, a gray sky greeted me. The city was quiet, but that silence was no longer a threat. It was like peace. The apartment I was staying in was small but cozy. I had enough savings to pay the rent. Most importantly, no one knew me there. I started using the name Selena there, because Amara had been burned by that pain. Selena would rise from the ashes. It was difficult to get used to my new identity. But Paris gave me time. In the mornings, I drank coffee in cafes and watched people. At noon, I stood in front of street artists and said to myself, "You are an artist too." Because if a woman can rewrite her own life, she is a kind of artist. For the first few weeks, I didn't turn on my old phone. I wondered if Jason would still call. But then I realized his silence was my greatest answer, even if he turned to me and said, "I'm sorry." I couldn't go back to that woman. One night, it was raining. Looking out the window, I admitted, to myself, I wasn't in love with him. I was in love with the dream he left behind. And that night, I buried that dream. The next morning, I got my hair cut. It was a small change, but when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I didn't. Recognized but liked for the first time. Selena. Selena wasn't crying. Selena was walking. Selena was breathing. 3 months passed. I had gotten used to work. The pace of life in Paris first tired me, then made me fall in love with the city. I became friends with the owner of a small cafe. One day he asked me, "What do you miss most in the world?" I smiled and said, "Myself," but I had begun to remember. One day while walking, I saw a painting in a shop window. It was a woman's face painted in shades of blue and gold. There was a single sentence written on it. "Love is sometimes just thanking the one who left you." I stared at it for a long time. Then I went inside and bought the painting. That night, I hung it across from my bed, because now Selena was writing her own story. It had been exactly 97 days since I had settled in Paris. In the early days, the thought of maybe I'll go back was always in the back of my mind. But by the end of the 3rd month, I realized that this city was no longer foreign to me. In fact, it probably knew me better than I knew myself. I was now drinking my coffee at the same cafe every morning and walking to work along the same route. Since I started my job in the culture and diplomacy department, people had been looking at me as a determined, confident, organized woman. Yet I still felt like someone trying to build a city on the ruins inside me. Rising from the ruins. It's not as poetic as it sounds. Sometimes it's hard to get up in the morning. Sometimes it's hard to swallow the lump in your throat that comes out of nowhere. But after a while, you learn to recognize the sound of that pain, and you learn to keep walking despite it. This morning I had my coffee with my usual small notebook. I liked taking notes, pouring my thoughts into random sentences. I wrote this sentence in the middle of the page. "I learned myself after you. The first time I attended a gathering, I wore a simple black dress. I came alone. When I entered the room, everyone was chatting with each other. Wine glasses, French laughter, and soft classical music. I was a small but upright woman in the crowd. That's where I met Etienne, a man with curly hair and a slender build. There was a sense of lived experience in his eyes, but a hint of childlike innocence on his face. When he approached me, raised his glass and said, "This wine is bold, but it can't compare to you." I couldn't help but laugh. It was the first time I had smiled at a man since Jason. That night, Etienne and I talked at length. I told him why I had left Turkey, what I was trying to do here, and even that my favorite cartoon as a child was Heidi. But one thing caught my attention. I didn't mention Jason. I didn't mention him because the pain inside me was still there, but for the first time, I didn't let it seep out. When Etienne said, "You're carrying a secret, I can tell," I just brushed it off with, "Every woman has a little secret anyway." But a voice inside me said, "If this man tries to figure you out, he might lose you." I didn't have the courage to love someone again yet. A week later, Etienne messaged me. "Can you show me your bookstore? I'm curious about those cultural footnotes you admire." It had been a long time since I'd met someone who wasn't satisfied with just a cup of coffee. The questions he asked me during our meeting were sharp and clever. Do you value your feelings or your mind more? Have you ever truly forgiven someone in your life? Did your regret make you grow, or did it make you bitter? Talking to him was like holding up a mirror to myself. But it was also frightening, because no matter how hard I tried to appear strong, there was still a wounded woman inside me. That night, I was alone again. Etienne's face was before my eyes, but being with him was like entering another battle, fighting my own emotions, trying to protect myself, walking that fine line between letting someone in and keeping them out. That night I asked myself, Do you truly want to be happy with someone, or has this loneliness become your new comfort zone? The answer echoed inside me. I'm still not healed, but I don't want to hide anymore. Our meetings with Etienne continued, but I drew a line. Not romantic, but friendly. He accepted that line. He respected it. And that respect taught me to trust again. People can love again over time. But first, they must forgive themselves. They must not be ashamed of where they broke. And most importantly, they must understand that being lost does not make them any less valuable. One day, my mother called. We hadn't spoken in a long time. Her voice was trembling. "I'm proud of you," she said, "leaving everything behind and building a life for yourself. That takes great courage." At that moment, I cried like a child, because I had said goodbye not only to Jason, but also to my mother, to her protection, her support. I had pushed away her love because I thought I had to do everything on my own. But now, for the first time, someone had told me, "I'm proud of you." And for the first time, I felt I deserved those words. At work, I was asked to lead a project. We were organizing a major event on cultural diversity and women's representation in diplomacy. While preparing for that event, I had to confront my past. I wanted to share my own story at the beginning of the presentation. But how? One night, I wrote this sentence in my notebook. "Sometimes you fall apart, but from that wreckage, a map emerges." And that sentence became the opening line of my presentation. My speech received a standing ovation. But for me, the real victory was being able to say those words without trembling. About Jason, about being abandoned, about coming to Paris, about becoming Selena. Every word broke another chain inside me. After the event, Etienne came over to me. "I understand you better now," he said. "You're not just strong, you're enchanting." I smiled, but this time all I could say to him was, "Thank you," because now what I felt was more important than what someone else said to me. That night I walked home for a long time. Under the yellow light of the street lamps, I said to myself, I am slowly being reborn. Yes, I still had broken parts, but those breaks were no longer a source of shame. They were the pages of my story. Some goodbyes aren't as loud as a door slamming. Sometimes you just stare at a point, nod your head, even though it hurts inside. You accept it, like endless surrender. That's exactly how I woke up that morning. It was as if someone inside me, my old self, had hugged me one last time during the night and left in the morning. In my dream, I was in the middle of the sea. I was swimming, tired, slowly but steadily. As I approached the shore, someone reached out their hand to me. That person was me, but the old me. As soon as I woke up, I understood. This city was no longer an escape, but a place of encounter, the place where I faced myself, where I no longer ran away. At the bottom of the wardrobe, the small black suitcase I had brought with me when I came to Paris was still there. There was a note my mother had pinned to it. No matter what happens, remember, you are my brave daughter. I took the note in my hand. I read it slowly. Then I opened the suitcase. My last letter to Jason. A Polaroid photo we took together. A red dress I bought just for him but never wore. And the letter he wrote to me that day, but never sent. I found it by chance, wedged between his books after we parted. The time I spent with you was like a gift, but I didn't know how to open it, he had written. There was no apology in the sentence, but there was a confession. There was acceptance. I remember how it burned when I opened that letter for the first time that day. But now that sentence no longer burned me. It only whispered the truth. I had been loved, but at the wrong time by a half-man. I took the red dress, the suitcase too, the photos as well, and I left the house. Behind the house where I stayed, there was a small stone courtyard, a quiet, secluded corner that no one knew about, like a time gap in the middle of Paris. I sat down there. I placed the suitcase in front of me. I took out everything inside, one by one. I held each item in my hands for the last time. I said, thank you, to each one, to the pain, the longing, the shame, the anger. And then I began to burn everything inside a small tin box. I had torn the red dress to pieces. I burned the photos one by one. Then that letter. As the flames rose, this word crossed. My mind freedom. For the first time, I felt light. For the first time, it was as if the burden on my back, the chains on my feet, had been released. Only I remained. Simple, fragile, but the real me. That night, Etienne called. Hearing his voice made my throat tighten. "You're different today," he said. "Your voice sounds clearer." "I buried my sins," I said with a smile. "I left behind whatever was holding me back. I won't apologize to anyone anymore. Neither for what I loved, nor for what broke me." Etienne fell silent. Then he simply said, "Now you've truly begun to live." The next morning, my first task was to delete my old email account. My name was still Amara T there. I wanted to exist as Selena now. I couldn't walk toward the future without leaving the shadows of the past behind me. That day, I officially changed my identity. Selena, meaning moon goddess, a woman who never loses her light, even in the darkness. When I received my new passport, I couldn't hold back my tears. It wasn't just a document, it was a rebirth. I started working with a psychologist. Her name was Claire. In our first session, I told her, "I'm skilled at building walls, Claire, but now I want to open windows too." Claire just listened. She waited for me to speak. I told her about the places where I had buried Amara inside me, but also dug her grave. In one session, I said, "I'm not angry at her. I'm angry at the value I gave myself. It's not that she doesn't love me. I had surrendered myself into her hands." Claire's eyes filled with tears. Being able to say that sentence is the very heart of the healing journey, she said. At the end of that month, Etienne gave me a small concert ticket as a gift. Vivaldi was playing, the Four Seasons. As spring began, I was reborn. I closed my eyes in the concert hall. The music touched the emotions within me. It was as if the strings were striking the broken pieces inside me, then slowly repairing them. After the concert, Etienne took my hand for the first time. "If you're not ready, I can let go," he said. But at that moment, I didn't let go of his hand because I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of trusting someone. Not of getting lost again. I was fearless simply because I was myself. Weeks passed. I moved into my own home. I made peace with myself. I called my mother, and hearing her voice made the little girl inside me happy. I decided to live life not as a victim, but as a writer. I wrote this sentence in a small notebook. I chose myself. That evening I looked in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, my eyes were shining. The lines on my face hadn't changed, but the woman inside me was different. "Amara?" I asked the reflection in the mirror. "No," I said. "Selena." And that night I began to rewrite the first page of my own life. Some hearts, you think, will never bloom again. But if the sun is patient enough, even the most resentful soil will sprout. My heart was just like that. Broken, closed, resentful. But then someone came, sat quietly beside it, and without rushing, just waited there. He became the sun. He became Etienne. When I first truly began to love him, a voice inside me said, "Run away." The form of love I was accustomed to was wounded. I had grown accustomed to losing myself and exhausting myself in another person. But Etienne, he knew how to love from a different place. He didn't push me when I was silent. He didn't run away when I cried. He didn't retaliate when I was angry. "I can be friends with your walls," he said one day. "Just don't think of me as your enemy." One Sunday morning, he brought me coffee. There was a note on it. "It takes courage to start from where you're afraid. Give yourself a little chance today." That morning, holding the coffee in my hand, I asked myself, if someone you love isn't hurting you, isn't diminishing you, isn't trying to change you, why are you still punishing them? The answer was already there somewhere inside me. I hadn't forgiven myself, not him. I still didn't trust myself. What if I make another mistake? What if I choose someone else over myself again? But if you make your fears the guard at the door of your heart, no love can enter. Our first big argument with Etienne happened in a bookstore. It seemed like a trivial thing, a disagreement over a book recommendation. But what was triggered inside me was something else entirely. My voice rose, my eyes filled with tears. I tried to run away. Etienne didn't follow me. He didn't pressure me that day. He just sent a message. "I'm giving you space because I won't fight your fears. I'm here to be with you, not to change you." I cried on the subway alone because that message had touched the deepest wound inside me. I had always fought to be accepted, to be loved, to stay. But for the first time, someone was offering me love without a fight, and I wasn't used to it. I talked about this with my psychologist, Claire. Etienne isn't threatening you, but the people in your past were passively punishing you. Now the good you see is making you uncomfortable because you're vulnerable. Being vulnerable. I turned that word over and over in my mind. Then I asked Claire this question. What if being vulnerable isn't weakness but strength? Claire winked. Then you'll truly begin to experience love. A few days later, I met with Etienne. When he took my hand, I didn't pull away for the first time. I turned to him and said, "I'm afraid to love you, but this time, I'll face my fear." Etienne smiled. "There's nothing I want more than to walk with you." From that day on, every moment I spent with him was a kind of rebirth. We walked together, drank coffee, got lost in old bookstores, and each time, the old voice inside me grew a little quieter. But every healing comes with a test. One day, while walking the streets of Paris, I saw my ex-boyfriend, Jason. Yes, months later. My expression froze. He didn't even notice me. There was someone else, on his arm. He walked past me with that old innocent smile of his. The Selena inside me took a deep breath. Amara trembled, but I wasn't the old me anymore. Etienne noticed the frozen look on my face. "What happened?" he asked. "I bumped into my past," I said. "I used to get lost in it. Now I just walk past it." Etienne rested my head on his forehead. "That's what growing up is like," he said. That night, as I lay in bed thinking, I realized love isn't just about loving. It's also about staying true to yourself. I was no longer changing myself to please others. I could be myself, and I was loved for who I was. For the first time, the fear that if I am myself, I will be alone, had given way to another belief. I am loved for who I am. 2 weeks later, Etienne spoke openly about his life for the first time. He lost his mother at a young age, struggled with depression for a time. And one day while walking, he saw me, and a voice inside him said, "She's broken like you." We showed each other our scars, but no one rubbed salt into each other's wounds. We just looked, and we were there together. A miracle was happening inside me. For the first time, a relationship wasn't diminishing me. It was making me grow. I was finally learning what toxic love wasn't, and what true love looked like. One day, while looking out the window, I said to myself, love isn't a battle. It's a safe haven. Etienne was my harbor. But most importantly, I had become my own harbor. Still, old fears echoed inside me from time to time. When a message came late, when the tone of voice changed. But I recognize that voice now. Echoes from the past. Not real. Told myself, live in the moment without judgment. The present is your power. Toward the end of that spring, Etienne gave me a gift. A small, simple necklace. Inside was a tiny note. Love despite everything. When I put on that necklace, my eyes filled with tears. Because it wasn't just a gift. It was like a summary of my journey. I loved despite everything. Despite being broken. Despite being afraid. Despite my past. And finally, I learned love is not about sacrificing yourself. It is about making room for someone else while loving yourself. There are some things that first destroy you, then create a whole new you. When I reached that threshold, I couldn't go forward, nor could I go back. I was suspended in limbo. But right there, I made a decision. I will no longer be a bandage for other people's wounds. I will bandage my own wounds too. My relationship with Etienne was growing. But I wanted to pursue my own existence beyond his love. For the first time, someone wasn't completing me. I wasn't incomplete. But I had once believed that. So one morning I woke up and decided to write my own name, in the truest sense. I would create something that bore my name. I started with a small blog, Amara's Letters. My words would no longer just reach my diary, but also others' hearts. The professional world wasn't what it seemed. Red lipstick, meetings, coffee cups. All of these were just shells. The real struggle was a woman trying to make her voice heard. At my first job interview, they looked at the skirt I was wearing, not my resume. At the second interview, they asked, is being so emotional an advantage or a disadvantage? And at the third, a female manager pulled me aside and whispered, it's not enough to just look strong. You have to prove that you are strong. That's when I understood. I had to grow stronger without breaking. But not breaking didn't mean building walls. It meant staying flexible. I stayed quiet for the first few months at the office. I observed. I learned a lot. But one thing always bothered me. Women were always portrayed as competitors. I wanted to break that cycle. One day, I spoke up in a meeting and said, rising together is more valuable than winning alone and staying alone. No one clapped, but a woman gave me a wink. It was like a silent approval, and that glance showed me I wasn't alone. Etienne was always by my side during this process, but I no longer needed him. This didn't mean my love had diminished. On the contrary. Now that I had become whole with myself, I could love him freely. One night he said to me, I admire you, Selena. You are no longer just a lover, but a guide on your own path. And I realized, being a woman is not just about delicacy. Being a woman is knowing the art of making flowers bloom from the ruins within. Life sometimes throws trials one after another, as if it were testing you. One day, suddenly, my blog went viral overnight. The letter I wrote, titled "Letter to Myself," was shared by thousands of people. People were commenting, "That's exactly me. You read my mind. I'm on the same path as you." Tears streamed down my face, because this wasn't just a success. It was a wounded heart, shining light on other hearts. I hadn't just healed myself. I had paved the way for someone else. 2. One day I passed by my old house. It belonged to someone else now. But I held a small ceremony inside myself. I stopped. I said to myself, I was broken here, but I grew up in this broken place. Thank you, my past. I will continue on my path, not by carrying you, but by understanding you. At that moment, there was an indescribable lightness inside me. For the first time, it was not the shadow of the past, but the sun that was upon me. To grow stronger without breaking. Actually, it also involved breaking. But the issue was not to fight against that brokenness, but to understand it. My sleepless nights decreased. My self-criticism subsided. And every day I began to wake up to a new me. Sometimes Etienne and I talked until dawn about what life, justice, and love are. He had become my closest friend, at the same time my safest haven. But most of all, we were a we who could continue to be ourselves, because I now knew if you lose yourself in a relationship, love cannot find you. During this process, I received an offer to start my own column in a digital magazine. At first, I was afraid. There are some paths. You walk towards the sun. But then you realize that shadows are only possible with light, and the direction of your heart may not always lead to peace, but sometimes to storms. I began to face this reality that morning. A year with Etienne brought me both a spring season and the feeling of emerging from the coldest winter inside me. We explored new cities together. We tried new flavors. But most importantly, we learned each other's silence. Sometimes we could smile at the same time without saying a word. And this was the simplest, yet most powerful form of love. But life chooses not those who stand still. It chose those who dare to change for its tests. One morning, I was late for the office. At the metro exit, people were bumping into each other as they rushed forward. Haste, sweat, strangeness. But suddenly, someone bumped into me. And that bump touched not only my body but also my past. The man standing before me. It was Alec. Perhaps the most complicated chapter of my university years. He had never been able to fully express himself in my life, but his silence had kept me waiting for years. He had been afraid to love me, and then he had disappeared. And now, years later, he was standing before me again. Our eyes met. I swallowed hard. He smiled. "Selena." "Yes. You're still so beautiful." The words caught in my throat, not because of my beauty, but because of the lost years. "Do you still like disappearing?" I said involuntarily. He laughed, but there was guilt in his eyes. I deserved it. I shook my head and walked away. But a stone had rolled inside me, and sometimes the smallest stone can start the biggest storm. That day, my mind was on Alec throughout all the meetings. Etienne's warmth always felt like breath to me. But Alec's shadow had emerged from the past and fallen over me again. And I was most angry at myself, because I was still affected. When I got home that night, Etienne was waiting for me. He had my favorite red wine in his hand, and the ingredients for the lasagna we were going to make together on the counter. But I noticed something in his eyes. "Selena, are you okay?" I couldn't lie. I faced my past today, I said. Etienne fell silent. Does your past still hurt you? No, I said. But in truth, the wound had scabbed over. But when it was scratched, it still stung. The next day, I received an email from Alec. Long, regretful, but respectful. He wanted to complete the unfinished sentences from the past. I didn't respond, but I spoke to my heart. I forgave you, I said to myself, because forgiving you meant respecting my past. But this forgiveness wasn't about erasing things. It was about accepting them as they were. I told Etienne everything. I didn't want to carry a secret that would threaten our relationship. Etienne listened without saying a word. Then he simply said, I am willing to walk with you in the present, not your past. But you cannot build the present without accepting the past. I had no doubt that he loved me when he said this. But his mature attitude healed a deeper wound inside me. I now knew I was loved. But I had also learned to love, not out of attachment, but out of awareness. That week, I wrote a new post on my blog, Old Lovers, True Faces. It contained this sentence: some people come into our lives not to hurt us, but to show us the pieces we need to complete. And I added, leaving behind is not forgetting. Leaving behind is no longer carrying. The post was shared thousands of times because everyone had an Alec, and everyone still had that fear of opening that old notebook. Days passed. I never heard from Alec again, and I silenced all the echoes of him inside me. But my true transformation began in that silence, because I finally understood. The heart's direction doesn't always point toward love. Sometimes it points toward confrontation. One evening, while walking on the beach with Etienne, he turned to me. Would you like to live in a new city together? A new city? Yes. I have a job offer in Paris, but my only condition is that I go with you. I fell silent. Paris, it was my dream. But my fears were there too. Let me think about it, I said. With you, anywhere feels like home. But first, I don't know if I'm ready to move inside myself. That night, I thought until dawn. The past, Etienne, Alec, my blog, my inner journey. And when I woke up in the morning, with the sunlight streaming through the window, I made a decision. I couldn't stay where I was anymore. My heart wanted a new direction, and that direction was courage. I took Etienne's hand. I'm ready, I said. New city, new chapter, but the same us. That day, a door closed within me, and a brand new path began. The past was no longer a burden, but a part of my story. And this time, I was the one charting the course of my heart. Some cities are not just places. They are tests. Paris was a dream for me, but it was also a mirror of my fears, my past, and my identity. And when I first set foot in Paris, I didn't know that I was actually walking toward myself. Etienne's job was very close to the center of Paris. The small but aesthetically pleasing apartment we stayed in was like the first real home we had built together. The streets smelled of a mix of lavender, coffee, and rain. But for the first week, I couldn't feel like I belonged in this city. I continued writing my blog in the mornings. Getting used to the sound of a new language and the gaze of new people took time. And most importantly, it was hard to get used to being a new me. One day, Etienne left early in the morning. He was going to meet his new team. I decided to go out alone for the first time. I walked to Montmartre. I lost myself in the narrow streets. Street artists, children, an old man playing the melodica. They all touched me. But as I passed by a cafe, a voice stopped me. "Selena!" I turned my head, a familiar face. But I couldn't remember her name. The woman took off her sunglasses. At that moment, time stood still. Mathilde, Etienne's ex-girlfriend, Etienne, had mentioned her to me, but only superficially. "She's gone now," he had said. "She used to be important, but now she's in the past. But the past is sometimes like a shadow. No matter how far you go forward, it knows how to follow you." Mathilde approached me. She was slender, elegant, and stylish, but there was a measuring quality to her gaze, as if she were analyzing my life with her eyes. "I wasn't expecting you," she said. "I didn't imagine Paris to be this complicated either," I said with a smile. She didn't smile. She offered to have coffee together. I accepted. Curiosity is both poison and medicine, and at that moment, I wanted to drink both. While sitting in the cafe, she never took her eyes off me. "Etienne loves you," he said directly. "I can see that." "Yes," I said. "And I love him too." A moment of silence. Then his lips moved. "If I were you, I'd be careful." The sentence hung in the air. Be careful? Of what? Of whom? Just as I was about to ask, he stood up. "It was nice to meet you," he said. But he didn't smile. That day, Paris felt cold to me for the first time. I went outside and looked up at the sky. It was gray, but it wasn't the city that was gray. It was my heart. I didn't tell Etienne that evening. He was excited, talking about new projects. I was silent. But as my eyes followed him, a question echoed in my mind. Does the past really stay in the past, or do we just want it to? Days passed. I didn't hear from Mathilde, but her voice was in my head. Be careful. What did that mean? One day I wanted to surprise Etienne at his office. I had croissants in my hand and a small note I had written in my bag. I still love you today. But as I approached the building, something caught my attention. Mathilde was coming out the door, and she was with Etienne, and Etienne was smiling at her. I froze. I didn't hide, but I didn't call out either. I just watched, then I quickly turned away. At that moment, I understood. Paris was not only a city of love, but also a city of confrontation with reality. That night, I didn't let Etienne know anything, but an old pain awakened inside me. Not the fear of betrayal, but the fear of not understanding. Was I ready to face the past of the man who gave me confidence? Or was I still living in the shadow of my own insecurity? The next morning, I waited for him. I set the breakfast table. Then I sat down across from him. I saw Mathilde as she was leaving the office. His eyes widened for a moment, but then he calmed down. Yes, she joined the new project as a consultant. I was going to tell you. You should have told me about the life we built together, I said. He swallowed. At that moment, he could have said so many things, but Etienne remained silent with his honesty. If this situation bothers you, I will ask her to leave. No, I said. I'm not concerned with your choices, but with your intentions. But a corner of my heart was still tense. That night I wrote this in my blog. Loving someone doesn't mean ignoring their past, it means accepting it alongside them. But some pasts, they continue to breathe like living ghosts. During my second month in Paris, Mathilde opened an exhibition. She invited me. I wasn't planning to go, but the warrior woman inside me wanted to confront it. I went to the exhibition. Inside, Not only paintings, but also emotions were hanging on the walls. One painting caught my attention. 2 silhouettes walking hand in hand on a misty street. But a third shadow was watching them from behind. The painting's title, The Third. Matilda came over to me. "I painted it for you," she said. I was surprised. "Am I the third?" "No," she said. "I am the third. But sometimes being the third, even in the past, gnaws at you. And sometimes the past envies the future." My eyes filled with tears, because Matilda was fighting not against me, but against her own inner demons. That day, we both remained silent. But the reckoning inside me was complete. The past was no longer Etienne's test, but mine. And to pass this test, I needed not anger, but forgiveness. As I walked through the night in Paris, I told myself, I now belong to myself as a woman. I will look not to a man's past, but to my own future. That night, Etienne and I went up the Eiffel Tower. The cold wind blew my hair around, but my heart was warm. I held his hand. "I'm here," I said. "I've accepted your past. But if there's no honesty in our future, I can't stay here." He nodded. "For the first time in my life, I feel that today is more valuable than the past. And you're the only truth in this city. Everyone has a secret. Mine was a notebook whose pages flowed like blood. That notebook was not just a diary, it was my second heart. And one morning, I couldn't find it. When I went to the kitchen to make my coffee, everything was normal. But then, when I turned to my desk, I felt that something was missing. My computer was in its place. So was my pencil case. But my notebook, that special one with the red cover and the slightly worn string, was gone. I tried to stay calm at first. I searched the entire house, under the bed, inside the closets, in the laundry basket. It wasn't there. It wasn't there. It wasn't there. My hands started to shake. Something caught in my throat. It was as if someone had taken all my secrets and run away with them. Everything was in that notebook. The details of the abuse I suffered as a child, why I was afraid of my first love, the angry lines I wrote on the day I argued with my mother, and what I wrote about Etienne. There were good things too, but I had also written about my doubts, those poisonous feelings I had toward Matilda, my fear that Etienne might one day lie to me. If someone found that notebook, it could ruin not just me, but my relationship too. I didn't tell Etienne. Not yet. Maybe I just put it somewhere. Maybe. But the next day, I found an envelope in my mailbox. There was a single piece of paper inside the envelope. It was handwritten. "As long as you hide the truth, you are not free. I am here to remind you who you are. I will share one more page every day. If you have the courage, speak up. Otherwise, you will slowly dissolve while remaining silent. S." Inside the envelope was a page from my diary. Lines describing the darkest day of my life when I was 12 years old. My knees buckled. My breath caught in my throat. Tears streamed down my face, but no sound came out. Someone didn't want to silence me. They wanted to make me speak. But what? I couldn't write on my blog that day. My hand wouldn't reach the keyboard. My pen trembled. I was just scared. Who was this person? A reader? An enemy? Maybe? Someone knew me, the real me, and they were trying to reshape me. The next morning, the second envelope arrived. This time it contained a paragraph I had written about Etienne in my diary. I had written, "Etienne treats me very well, but there's still a sense of strangeness. It's as if he's not fully opening up to me. And I can't confess this to the man I love, because I lost everything I loved one day." I read it and felt ashamed. I had written this to Etienne but hadn't told him. I realized I wasn't being transparent with him. But someone knew, and they were confronting me. I started tracking them down. The mailbox where the envelope came from was in the center of Paris. There was no sender's name. One day there was another small note in the envelope. "I watched you at the gallery. You look strong, but you still carry that little girl inside you. Accept it and be reborn." At the gallery, that is, at Matilda's exhibition. My vision went dark. Matilda, I hadn't seen her since. But would she do something like this? Her voice, her attitude, that painting at the exhibition. It all started to make me think. But still, I didn't want to accuse her directly. I hadn't told Etienne yet. I needed to pull myself together. I had to find out who was watching me. Otherwise, my mind would be torn apart. In the third week, another envelope arrived. This time, it wasn't in the mail. It was wedged under the door of the apartment building, and inside, it only said, "I want to watch you tomorrow. Sit on the bench in front of the Louvre at 4 p.m. We won't make eye contact, but I'll be watching you. The longer you stay silent, the more pages I'll publish. If you speak, maybe I'll stop. S." I went. I sat down, a weight on my back, fire in my heart. It was 4 p.m. People were passing by in front of me. Tourists, couples, singles. But I didn't know if any of them were him. And I didn't speak, because I didn't know what to say. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't act out of fear anymore. If a game was being played, I had to be not just the victim, but also the player in that game. I set a trap. I bought a spare notebook. I wrote a fake confession. I wrote that Etienne loved another woman, that I knew it, but kept quiet. And I left it in the apartment building's mailbox. I waited. 3 days passed. No envelope came. On the 4th day, a message arrived on my phone. "You think your lies will protect you, but I know you. As long as you don't tell the truth, your life will remain in my hands." S. I froze. This person wasn't just someone who read me. They were someone who watched me, tested me. And maybe they were an enemy trying to make me who I am. The next day, I told Etienne everything about my diary being lost, the envelope, the threats, my fears. He was silent for a moment, then he took my hand. "Even your darkness is more real than others. Light, let them know what they know. I'm with you." That night, I cried for the first time, not out of fear, out of relief. But the story didn't end there, because my diary was still missing, and I was still tracking the ghost with the letter S. Mornings are beautiful in Paris, but sometimes that beauty hides a horror beneath it. There was no longer the smell of coffee in my mornings, only traces of old notebooks, rusty envelopes, and heart palpitations. After telling Etienne everything, thought I could trust him for a while. But then the oddities began. The day before the envelope was left, the person who always checked the mailbox first was Etienne. I wasn't accusing him, but now I had to consider every possibility, because my diary was still missing, and someone was still forcing me to wake up. I went through Etienne's phone. It wasn't like me, but I had no other choice. One message caught my attention. It was from someone named Kay. "Let's meet tomorrow morning. I can't wait any longer on this matter. It's time to decide. Kay, Who was this? A woman? A man? I can't wait any longer on this matter. What matter? That night, I didn't ask Etienne. I decided to follow him. He left the house early in the morning. I noted the times in the small notebook I had in my hand. I put my cell phone in my coat pocket and started recording. I took a step back and began following him. They met at a cafe. The woman was tall and brunette. She clearly knew him. Etienne's smile was fake. The woman looked worried. I sat down in a chair near their table and listened in. Selena doesn't know, does she? No, she doesn't know. But she doesn't need to know. What if she finds out? She's already fragile enough. She can't handle anymore. The words stuck in my mind. She doesn't know. Fragile enough. Who was I? Was I just a secret in his eyes? I got up. I walked over to the table. Etienne paled when he saw me. The woman looked at me with a surprised expression. Selena? Go on, I said. The fragile girl is listening. Etienne stood up. Look, I can explain. Yes, Etienne, explain. For example, who is this woman? The woman interjected. I'm his former therapy counselor. For a moment, my breath caught. Therapy? What? Etienne bowed his head. There was a period in my past, a period I can't talk about, and because I loved you, I wanted everything to seem normal. The woman quietly stood up. It seems you don't need me, she said. And she left the cafe. We were left alone. A table, a coffee cup, and 2 broken hearts. Etienne began to tell me. He had undergone a short period of treatment in his youth. He had experienced a period of severe depression. He couldn't cope with the feeling of emptiness triggered by his mother's sudden death. But he hadn't told me any of this, because I was fragile inside too. He wanted to protect me, but I felt like it was a betrayal. But my notebook? I said. It wasn't me, he said. His eyes filled with tears. If it had been me, I would have told you right away. I couldn't do that to you. At that moment, I felt a little relieved. Etienne being so vulnerable, being free of lies. Maybe I could trust him again. But there was still the S, the envelopes, the pages, the threats, and that person still didn't want me to speak up. The next day, another envelope arrived. This time, there were 2 things inside. A new page from my diary. A photograph. I was in the photograph. The evening. We first met Etienne as we were leaving the bookstore on the corner. No one else had seen this photo. Only one other person was there that day. Matilda. At that moment, a cold thought struck me. I had seen her passing by the bookstore corner before entering the exhibition that day. But what was she doing there? This was now a personal matter. Matilde? Is that you? I looked up. The sky over Paris was cloudy, but the storm inside me was much louder. It was time to confront it. Not just the letter S, but myself, my fears, my past, and the ghost of a woman. My hands were shaking as I knocked on Matilda's door. The storm inside me was carrying the anger of years of silence. Sometimes before you forgive someone, you want to know what they really did to you. I was walking towards that truth now, when the door opened. Her face did not change at all. As always, she looked cold, reserved and threatening. Selena, she said simply. No surprise, no welcome. As if she was waiting for me to come. As if I was still part of the game she had started years ago. I went in. The air of the house was still the same. A scent of lemon cologne, book dust, and a floral loneliness. As if time had stopped, there, and I had stepped into the grave of my former self. She sat down. She didn't even offer me tea. I didn't ask. I got straight to the point. "Why are you bothering with me?" She smiled. It's a perverse smile, like a sharp line, unfinished and disturbing. "Why now?" I asked. "Why did you start this game now, after all these years?" Matilda clasped her hands. She spoke. "Because it's time to open your eyes, because you've always only known half the story, Selina, and the other half was mine." I didn't understand what she meant for a moment, but my heart had already sensed danger. "What are you saying?" Matilda stood up. She pulled a yellowed letter out of a book drawer. There was a name written in my own handwriting on the envelope. Claire. I froze. Claire. My mother's closest friend. But also, this letter was written years ago. Matilda said, "Claire, a few months before your mother died, she sent me this letter. But I couldn't show it to anyone. Because you had to make a decision. You had to find your own way." My hand reached out and took the letter. I opened it, trembling. My eyes welled up with tears the moment I saw the first line. "I will pay the price for protecting Selina, Claire. But please, when the time comes, tell her everything. Sentence by sentence, letter by letter." I was unraveling. My mother's suicide, it was never a momentary weakness. It was a sacrifice, a choice made to protect me from people who would harm me. Among these people was my father and my own mother, because I was born of a betrayal, and that truth had killed my mother while she was alive. Matilda continued, "Your father not only wasted you, but also your mother, and for years you lived only holding on to the edge of a wounded past. You had to know now, because your past and mine intersected, and at that intersection, there was another person. At that moment, all the walls inside me collapsed. Who? I said. Who is the person who frightens me with the letter S? Matilda took out another envelope, a black and white photograph inside. A young man embracing a woman. The woman was familiar, and the man, yes, it was my father. But the woman's face, I saw myself, but it wasn't me. That's your sister, Selina. What? Your sister from your father's extramarital affair, who is only a year older than you. Her name, Solène. The letter S, the silent follower. The one who tears pages out of my diary. The one who leaves letters, slowly driving me mad. It was my own brother. Where has he been all this time? Under protection. After what happened with your mother and father, they sent him to the south of France. They changed his name and erased his trace. But he never forgot you, because you lived a life that was not his. You grew up with your mother. You were loved, and he was left alone. All the truths piled up on me. I was not alone. But this loneliness was made possible by someone else's disaster. Matilda looked into my eyes and said her last sentence. Now is the time to decide, Selina. Do you want to face him, or say goodbye to your past? I fell silent. I could not find the words to speak. But I knew one thing. This story would not end here. Because something stronger than blood ties was the voice of truth. And now it was impossible to suppress that voice. That night I dreamed of my mother. She was watching me, not crying, but she smiled, as if she had forgiven me, as if she had given me permission. I woke up to a new morning, and now I would walk to one address, Solène. Winter had fallen early in Paris. Even the streetlights seemed to be freezing. I was walking with the burden inside me, as if I was carrying the pain of years with every step. There was nowhere left to escape. I had lived with questions for years. was afraid of the answers. But now my answer was in front of me. Solène. I arrived at the address Mathilde had given me. An old stone house in the Provence countryside, hidden behind lavender fields. Everything was silent. I stopped in front of the door. I didn't ring the doorbell. I knocked on the door. My heart was drowning inside me. And the door opened. The woman who saw me wasn't me, but she was familiar. The same eyes, the same jawline, the same experience. It wasn't a mirror, but I noticed the crack in the mirror for the first time. The silence stretched out. Then she spoke. I knew you would find me. Her voice was like mine, but sharper, more broken. I looked for you too, I said, but I didn't know how to look for you. I went inside. The house was small but warm. It was full of books, old photographs, and loneliness. Solène brought Meta. For the first time, I was looking not at a stranger, but at someone else. Why did you follow me? I had to follow your life, because that life could have been mine. I could have had a mother, a home. But I didn't live any of them. They silenced me, Selina. I wanted to say something, but what words would suffice to break the silence of a life? My mother was silenced too, I said finally. She was silent to protect you. Perhaps she died to protect me. Tears welled up in her eyes, and mine too. The two sisters were now disarmed against the past. We were only human beings. Solène took a box out of the desk drawer. It contained letters, diaries, and a photograph. I was a baby. She was a few years old. My mother was not with us. Our father stood behind us like a ghost. I held you in my arms, Solène said. But then one day you disappeared. They took you from me. I grew up as a child that day. I approached her. I held her hand. At that moment, we untied the knot of a bond that had been cut years ago. Two loneliness merged. Two wounds healed each other. Forgive me, I said, for the life you were not given. It wasn't your fault. But now there is a life we can write together, isn't there? There is. Perhaps incomplete, but an honest life. We talked for hours that day. We cried and laughed. We buried the past together. I gave her the last letter my mother wrote. She read me her first poem. I have never forgotten your name, she said. Sometimes I loved it more than my own. Tars, the sun set. We sat on the veranda. The stars had begun to come out. Solène leaned gently on my arm. She whispered quietly, "Talking to you has shed light on the darkness inside me. For the first time, someone has heard me. Thank you." I turned to her. For the first time, I have been truly understood. I had to go back to Paris now. But this time, I was not alone, because now I had a past, and my past had not swallowed me. I had transformed it. Months passed. Solène and I started seeing each other regularly. She moved to Paris too. We started to build a new life, slowly, carefully, but together. Mathilde left me a notebook when she said goodbye. There was a single sentence written on it. "The burden of truth is only given to those who can carry it." I am now writing in that notebook, my own past, my own story. And my first sentence was, "I am Selina. I grew up alone, but I was not alone, because the truth woke me up one day. And that day, I found my brother." If you liked my story, you can subscribe to my channel and test me by pressing the like button. Thank you for listening to me. See you in the next video.